This is Beyond with Heather Tesch, where we examine near-death experiences and life itself, hopefully making this life a little better. Hello, once again, my guest is Chrystal Rae. And Chrystal, we have just had such a wonderful discussion in parts 1 and 2, and I so appreciate you being here.
So glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. We're going to talk more about your book.
Okay.
But the big theme in this book is love. I mean, it's called Love Letters to Your Soul. And love is a huge theme in your life. And a lot of this came about from some of the spiritual experiences you had, along with just the things you learned in life. And one of the things you often ask yourself is, what is my most loving response?
Right.
And I think that's wonderful, because if we all did that, I mean, this world would just be so incredible. And I especially often think of this with social media today. And if everybody, before they posted, before they responded, before they make a comment, maybe even on this podcast, if they just thought about what is my most loving response,
right,
I think the world just would be so much better off.
Right.
And one thing you said, though, is that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the kindest.
Right. It's going to be the most loving response you have currently available within the consciousness that you currently inhabit, which may be better than yesterday, but not as good as tomorrow. You know, because we're here to evolve, and we cannot give what we don't have. So my question, like what was available to me 10 years ago, is much less than what's available to me now. And so I don't really have any judgment. And even if somebody can't give their most loving response, like purposely, that is their most loving response. So from my vision, or from my perspective, we're all living our most loving response. But when we bring consciousness to that, then there's true power for change. There's true power for transformation. And that simple question is so life-changing, Heather. It will change universes, because as I told you in my near-death experience, I saw that a kind act, a kind word ripples out. You not only get to experience it as the person and their children and their children's children, but it also changes the universe, like flowers blossoming. And, you know, they say in the butterfly effect, which I also go over in my book, where if a butterfly flaps its wing, it can create a tsunami. And that's how powerful, far more powerful are we with our very thought and intention. So when we purposely say, and even, you know, like to be human, if someone cuts me off on the freeway, my first intention is to have the magic finger as well. But that's not necessarily what I do. But that's just what happens. Like, I'm human, I'm fragile, I'm broken, and I'm beautiful at the same time. So then I reset, right? And I think being a yogi, one of the great tools that we have for reset is our breath. And so I'll take a deep breath, and then I recognize them. And then compassion moves in for myself, for others. And sometimes I just laugh. I'm like, who is that masked man, talking about myself, who just acted out of that, you know, energy field? And I kind of laugh at myself. I'm like, okay, well, there's that person just showed you, just gifted you your area of growth. That's where you need to work on growth. So I think that many times people think spiritual beings or spiritual people in moving along on this planet, they don't ever have a rainy day. They never have the inclination to shout back. One of my favorite teachers is a guy named David Hawkins, who's now no longer on the planet, but he wrote this poignant book called Power versus Force, and many other books. But he had this highly spiritual experience, and when he had one of the biggest psychiatric practices in New York City, and he just left everything. And he went out, like many people who've had spiritual, and I think his experience was much like a near-death experience, except for it was just a spiritual experience that happened spontaneously. And he talks about at like 40 years old, somebody had done something to him, and he actually told them to F off. And he said he had never done that in his whole entire life. And it felt like the most loving thing that he could do in that moment. And so he went around for a couple just telling people to F off. And he's like this really spiritual guy. And it's so humorous, because then he said, and then I realized the futility of that and the silliness of all that, and it was over. But I think the point of his sharing that is that all experiences are valid within the sphere of human existence. And we're not meant to be perfect. That's why we're here. And so as we choose in each moment our most loving response consciously, then we start to empower ourselves, because then we start to notice, like, that wasn't kind, or, I could have been a little bit more gracious, or whatever the case may be. And, when I recontextualize things always, I'm like, I don't know what's going on in that person's life. Why did they cut me off? I don't know if they just got fired. They found out you know, they have some fatal disease. Who knows? And I give them the benefit of the doubt, and just knowing that also in an energetic universe, this is something to think about. Everything is a magnetic pull. So if that's coming to me, then just as Neil Donald Walsh had shared with me, that speck is inside of me, because no one can hold an energy in your presence unless you too have a speck of that energy where it resonates. If it doesn't resonate, it wouldn't be in your field of consciousness. And so, and that's, it's proven. That's like, if you do a tuning fork, you'll see that if one tuning fork hits, the others will start to vibrate at the same frequency. And so that's kind of what happens. There's a frequency that's a potentiality inside of you that this person ignites, or the circumstance or condition ignites, but it was always dormant there inside of you. And that's opportunity. In that moment, that person just seeded me with an opportunity to heal that part of me that always gets angry for being cut off on the tollway. Until finally, at this point in my life, I don't really get upset. People cut me off on the tollway. I'm like, go ahead, dude. You probably have more issues than I do. It's fine. Go ahead. And it's funny, because when you have this feeling like this, where you just have ultimate compassion, then you don't really get cut off anymore, which is funny, because when you don't want to be cut off, what do you think you attract? Or like when you're late for work, think of it this way. You get all red lights.
Right.
But on the Sunday afternoon, Heather, when you're free and you're easy, you have like all green lights, because your energy goes out in front of you. And so you're meeting the energy with your energy. And so that's why the lights are red. And on the Sunday afternoon, when you're just free and easy, it's all green lights. So I feel like as we do work on consciousness, suffering becomes less of an avenue of growth. In other words, you don't have to have all these dark nights of the soul. The tornado will hit in the city, but it won't hit your house. Not because you're so good, but because your energy, it doesn't resonate with that, and you don't need that lesson. And the other thing I want to talk about is karma, because I feel like there's so much misconception about karma with this idea. So many people are afraid because they've done bad things in their life when they were younger or whatever, they were less enlightened, and they've moved on and they've learned and they've made amends in the ways that they can. And there's this fear about coming back and being, having to experience some kind of bad consequence. And here's the thing. If you truly learn the lesson, if the lesson is learned, then in the grace of that, all karma is erased. Because what happens is that it's like a loving mother and a child. Like if the child learns, he shouldn't put the bobby pin inside of the light socket, which is basically hurting himself anyway, right? So everything that we do that hurts others is hurting ourselves. You don't come back after that child's dead and said, now you get to be punished because you made that mistake. And by the way, I created you flawed and fragile and broken, and now I'm going to punish you for that. It doesn't really work that way. You're given exactly what you need. Like all the predispositions of your life were given to you before you came into this life, and you knew that you were going to have these particular avenues of growth or struggle, however it may be, gifts or lessons. And so that's why it's so important. I can't even say again, it's so important to choose love, because love is like this giant eraser that erases because in the light of love, no darkness can exist. And so as you open up to your true resonance, to the blank screen of the soul, then there's no need for punishment or a prize. It's kind of silly. It's a silly ideal, and you just get to share your love with the universe and make the universe more beautiful because of the dark nights and crooked paths and all the things that you did to find your way there. And in that grace, all these karmic forces don't exist anymore, because as long as you've learned the lesson, now if that seed is still alive in you, you will have to come back again and again and find similar situations, either in this life or other lives, where you're going to get to learn that lesson. And you might even decide, well, I'm going to come back as the victim this time so that I know what it feels like, so that I can heal. My particular case, I was born into a household where my mom had a heavy drinking addiction problem. And then my daughter also had a heavy drinking problem and drugs and this. And I'm in the middle. I never drank. I never did drugs. Because, I mean, of course, when you grow up in that, you either go one way or the other. And I chose the other based on and I'm really grateful for all my spiritual experiences and near death experiences that kept me kind of like on the straight and narrow. But when I had these two very powerful women on either side of me that had problems with addictions, I understood, like, I was kind of the healing force in the family, because I was born into that, because there's a speck in me. I also had an eating disorder for many years, especially when I was modeling. I had, you're supposed to be rail thin, but I understood, because I remember when I had this eating disorder, I would purge or overeat and purge, and I thought, this is great because I can eat whatever I want. And no problem with the weight. I read about it in like a magazine. I thought, oh, what a great idea. I read about it when I was like 13 or something. I thought, this is fabulous. This will be the solution to everything. Because in my household, my mom also, because she was a comfort eater, I got that comfort eating gene as well. And so I was in the middle, and I understood how hard it was, because I had this eating disorder, which I'm actually really grateful for, because I understand addictions completely, because I understand how hard it is. And what we're looking for is comfort and a way not to feel the pain of our life, whether it's drugs, alcohol, or this, that, the other. And so I had great compassion for them. Both these powerful women in my life healed. And I was a pivotal part of that, because I was always holding the light of the possibility that there is a solution for this. And I'm really grateful. My mom stopped drinking poignantly when I left home, when I ran away from home, and she turned to Jesus, she turned to God. And then my daughter found her own way through the dark night of the soul, through a lot of self-discovery. She teaches breath work, and she's just this beautiful goddess of love right now. She's works with women's groups. She has an online, I think it's called the Power, what's it called? Power of Good, or a Force of Good. Yeah. She also does podcasts and Rae Rituals, which is where she signs up all these young women to come, and because just her story is so beautiful. And I mean, I held the light for both these women. I know that at one point, I left my mother and it changed her life. And at one point I had to tell my daughter, listen, I'll take you somewhere and put you on the street if that's what you want, but I can't support this behavior. And so, this power of love, like love so much that you're willing to lose everything. And that's how I had to find my own way. And so I came into this family, I think, energetically, with the seed of addiction to be healed inside of me. And I'm grateful for these two women that showed me that they were able to do that. And I remember when my daughter came to the other side, and she's been sober for over 2 years now. And I remember when I was so proud of her. I said, well, I heard about this yogi named Patabi Joyce, and his son had committed suicide because of some family dilemma. And Patabi Joyce felt so bad about it. And he was one of the best yogis, most enlightened yogis. And so he said, what can I give to my son? So he never practiced yoga again. And if you're a yogi, like that's a big deal. That's like if you love to play the piano and you never played the piano again. So I said, well, what can I give to my daughter? So my daughter always disliked it when I chewed gum. She was like, Mom, I just can't stand it when you chew gum. She never liked gum. And I always enjoyed gum. I mean, it's a simple thing. And I said, all right, this is what I'm going to do. I'm never going to chew gum again. So my gift to my daughter, because it's something I want to give you. It's a simple thing, but it's like an act of love. Even now she goes, oh my God, Mom, I didn't ask you not to chew gum. She's like, don't tell that story. But I'm just saying, like, the little things that we think, remember I told you earlier, like these poignant things in our life are not getting the degree, making more money, being the most beautiful, whatever people think, getting fame, power, all that. It's like these little things that are so meaningful. Like one day in another time, in another realm, she'll understand, like, for me, like the rest of my life, to say I will never chew gum again is such a gift of love that I could offer her. It doesn't mean anything maybe to anyone but me, but it means a lot to me in my own spirit of how I want to show her how proud I am of the hard work she's done on her own soul. Because we all get to do our own work. No one gets to do it for us. And even though we have angels and guides and spiritual teachers all around us, kind of like, like cheering us on, we get to do our own work. We literally get to save ourselves. And that's the joy of being human, is that we get to save ourselves. Because God gives us the liberty to do that, knowing that the screen will never be hurt, right? The screen will never be hurt.
Right.
Because you can think it's a dispassionate God. How could this happen? But when you think in the span of infinite time and space, 80 years is not even a speck. And you get to have this experience, which is such a great experience. As I said, I saw all these souls when I was in this out of body state, just wanting to come, wanting to be human, wanting to be alive, wanting to have this opportunity of choice, of freedom, of contrast, of change. Like excited to come and, live for a few minutes and then be aborted. Like excited about that. Like that kind of excitement, like to have the experience of a human life, to be an avatar, an ambassador of light, be a sacrificial lamb even. Whatever it is, it's life. And so I think what we think of typically in life is completely wrong. The only thing that matters is love. And the kind of love that I'm talking about, it doesn't have any opposite. It's just pure love. And so when we can start to embody that in small ways by asking the question that you talked about earlier, is this my most loving response currently available within my consciousness? 50 years from now, there might be a different availability, but right now, what can I do? And that's all we can ever do is that. So that's what I try to do, that.
And in your book, which is so beautifully written, you do talk so much about love, and it reminds me of the author Sarah Young. Are you familiar with her?
Mm-mm.
She wrote a book called Jesus Calling, and she writes from the perspective that Jesus is speaking to the reader. And that's how I felt with your book, because as I read it, I kept saying,
wow, that's a high bar. Thank you.
I kept asking, is this Chrystal talking, or is she expressing what God would say to me?
Yeah, this is what I was shown when I wrote this book. It was my soul, because we're soulmates of many lives. Anyone who picks up this book in my vision of it is because we're soulmates and they were meant to have it. And because my soul loves your soul, and because I am able to do it, I wanted to come back and be a support and to funnel the light that through me, not only my light, but the light of the divine source of love through me, and be an ambassador of light, and be an advocate of change on the planet, and just remind people you are so very loved. Because I remember I would read stories about Moses parting the seas and Jesus healing, the people that were dead and this and that. And I said, well, why isn't that happening now? Like, where are these avatars now? How about if I can come back and embody in this life, in which I was shown I was going to come back and do when I was in my out of body state, that I was going to come back and be this ambassador of light and tell the world that love is all that matters as a conduit of this unconditional love. So when I'm writing this book, like, there's a deep emotional part of me there, but it's also, I try to get myself out of the way and let consciousness, let love, the pure light of undifferentiated consciousness speak through me. So I try to, yes, I want to connect with Heather as Chrystal, but also my soul, the divinity of who I am, is speaking directly to the divinity of who you are, the divine light of you. So on another level, before we even started talking, our consciousness already had made this conversation happen. And there was always this knowing. So I feel like when I wrote the book, at first it was I had a lot of hesitation, because I was like, I'm being so vulnerable and I'm being so open and so loving. And so, but this is what I'm drawn to do, because I want to be that person that's strong enough to be vulnerable, so that whoever reads this book knows you are loved far more than you can imagine, and all is well. And I, as a physical being, flawed and broken just like you, am holding the space for that. Why? Because I can, because that's my destiny, that's my journey, and we all have our gifts. And I think so many times people think, well, this gift is better than that gift, but it's not. Every gift is important, and this is the gift that I've been given, and so I'm happy to share it. But I think a lot of times what you're saying about the writing, I mean, sometimes I'm like, wow, that's so beautiful.
It really is.
And I just wrote it. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. But it's because consciousness of love is moving through me. And it's actually been healing for me to write this book. So healing for me. And I think I told you it's taken me 20 years to even feel, ready to write the book. And then another 7 years to actually write it. And the process of writing has just been because and that's why you told me you got the book. I was like, oh, I'm so happy you got the book. But the editing process has been so intense because I want every word to be true to the highest degree of possible for me in this current embodiment.
Chrystal, I have a question from a viewer,
Okay.
and I'm hoping that you can give this person some insight. The question is about prayer.
Okay.
And the viewer says, we are often told all you need to do is ask, but rarely is that the case. I have taken that advice and believed it to be true and asked deeply from my heart in so many different ways for lots of different things, but rarely, if ever, is what I ask for given. More often than not, I'm asking for help during difficult times or for help for a sick animal, etc. Why is no help given? Why give us that hope when the request will likely not be granted as promised?
So let me start with this. First of all, I don't really believe in prayer. And the reason I don't believe in prayer is because I don't think I don't feel like I know exactly what's the highest and best for me in all moments. So if I ever do pray, my prayer is always this: may the highest and best happen for all involved. And then I let go. And so there's no expectation that I know better than the loving universe, which I think is so loving and kind. And I think in every moment, the highest and best, even in the most tragic of situations, when we can't even fathom how horrible things could be, in every moment, love is prevailing. In every moment, the highest and best for your soul is happening. Why is this horrible thing happening to you? Because there's that speck inside of you that needs to heal, that needs experience, that will make you stronger, that make you a more radiant being. And sometimes I think in our disappointments, in the lack of things turning out the way we want, we're actually given something better. And I know that's been true for me. Like when I was a kid, it's just a silly little example, but I remember there was a little girl in our school, and she had cancer. And so she was losing her hair. And I think I was like 6 or 7, something like this. And I remember thinking I was jealous that she had cancer because she was so special that she had cancer, and that everyone was doing this, beautiful cards for her and flowers for her. And anyway, she eventually passed away, and she had this beautiful. So my prayer at night, guess what it was, Heather?
What?
Dear God, can you please give me cancer?
No, no.
So, and I'm just telling the story because it's such a funny little story and so innocent. But I think this is the same innocence that we ask for things even as adults, that we don't understand that in every moment, we disregard the beauty of our own existence. As I said, we're looking for things to come in the package the way we want it, when we don't see the splendor, the resplendent splendor and shimmering joy and light all around us in a different kind of package. And even if we can understand it in that moment, when we exit this planet, we'll say, oh my gosh, that was the most beautiful gift I was ever given, to be hurt in that way. As I shared with you about my failed marriage, when I ended in that moment, like I'll never be able to repay my ex-husband for breaking my heart so much, because in that breaking of my heart, one of my favorite quotes is from a teacher named Gangaji. She says, let your heart be broken 1,000 times every day so that you can love more fully. And until that moment of having that extreme pain of heartbreak, did I ever understand what that really meant? Because in that moment, I was able to still love. And if you're able to love like that, that's unconditional love. Like, of course, I know I could love my children that way. I could, you think you have this unconditional love for your children, but I never really understood that you could actually love another human being that even perhaps someone who's hurt you quite profoundly, and just say, may they not suffer. May they be happy. May they find truth. May they find love. And then the gift of that, like I literally in that moment, I was in the darkest dark and the clouds moved away and the sun came out and the flowers were blossoming and the birds were singing. And I saw it and I was like, in that moment, I was just healed. I was healed of all the sorrow and I could just move on with my life. It was amazing. And all I did was step into love. And that's why I said, what is my most loving response? In that moment, I said, I hope he's happy. I hope she's good to him. I hope she loves him. In other words, I was saying, I love you so much that with or without me, may you be well. May you be happy. And that's unconditional love. So my vision of prayer is I don't believe in prayer because I don't believe that I know enough to know what's best for my life. Because I might have prayed perhaps, oh, don't let this marriage fail.
Right.
But then I would never have known the glory of unconditional love, which changed my whole perspective. Because if someone tells me, well, unconditional love doesn't exist, I can say, no, you're wrong. And I think even the horror and some of the really horrible things that I've been through, like going to school with bald spots because my hair was pulled out and bruises on my legs and, extreme, extreme pain of my childhood. When someone looks in my eyes and they say, I can't, this pain is too much. And I say, yes, you can. And I know because I've been there in the dark night of the soul. And so even that is a gift. And I remember at one point that omnipresent observer that I told you was so weird because I was like, they're not buying into my poor little crystal stories, which was also me because they knew that the scream was always right. The scream was pure and never harmed. And so when I go through all these dramas and traumas, I realize, it's not even true because everything's happening for you and nothing's happening to you. And so I don't really pray. I do pray for people not to suffer or for the highest and best to happen, but I don't pretend that I know the best because I'm still fragile. I'm still human. I'm still flawed. And if you just look at the creation of one single flower, like something that's always been poignant for me. And I love that you're wearing yellow because I tell you how these synchronicities with you, but something that was always like really important for me is those tiny little yellow flowers in the grass. They always kind of like gave me hope. It was like amidst all of this little flowers, sometimes they're like creeping through the edges of a sidewalk and they find a way to live. It's like this little yellow flower. And I look down and I'm like, oh my God, life, wanting to live in every circumstance, even if it's for a moment. And imagine like the opposite of life, of never knowing consciousness, of never knowing fear, of pain, like to be in oblivion and like just to know, even if this is the end, like even if you never knew anything else, you experience this and this and this and this and this until you don't. It wouldn't even matter because this is so important. I remember at one point thinking, even if I disappeared after this life, I want the ripple of my existence to be something that leaves light in the path. Like I want my existence, I don't really care about, but I want to know that every time, to the best of my ability, and I have failed a lot, I'm definitely not claiming to be, a Buddha or something like this. But every way that I possibly can I leave more light on the planet? And even when I was in the dating game, I remember I would on these little apps that people use, for dating. And I know I was talking about this in IN, and so many women came up afterwards and they were so grateful. But I remember thinking, because I'm a yogi and I don't really go out and I don't like crowds and I don't drink and this and that. So you really don't have any place to meet anyone. And I was single for 28 years before I met my wonderful husband, who's just this amazing guy that's kind of a bear too. He's not an easy guy, but he's fabulous. I love him so much. And I've never been so unconditionally loved. I'm just really grateful for him. But I remember I started my journey of like, okay, well, if I want a car, I'm going to go do some research. I'm going to try different cars. I'm going to decide which one I want. I'm going to see, what they're made of, what they're built of. So I said, okay, I'm going to start dating. And I was kind of embarrassed, the whole dating thing, because I'm like, okay, I'm 50 something and I'm dating. And I felt almost like a little bit desperate. You know what I mean? Like there was a little shyness about dating. Like people would say, what are you doing on an app? And I'm like, well, I'm trying to find my mate. So I decided I would give myself 5 years, after 28 years of being single, to find a mate. And of course, I didn't know how to date because I hadn't really been in the dating game. So it was quite the experiment just getting to know. And I decided early on that anyone that I met, that I would leave their life better. So even if they had like fake pictures or whatever, and I had a system, like I would not meet them for dinner and I right away they knew I was spiritual, I didn't drink this and that, and I would meet them for coffee and I could leave quickly if I needed to. And I only met like one person a week or two maximum. It was just overwhelming. So, but I remember the whole thing and I remember just meeting all these men and they're beautiful and seeing their beautiful soul and how everyone's just looking for the same thing, even if it wasn't a match. I really wanted to make their life better. And I really wanted, and I ended up with so many wonderful friends that are still friends of mine today because I decided like, even in 5 years, if I don't find a mate, then the common denominator is me. And that's fine. But I actually met my husband and, we've been married for 2 years now, but yeah, it was just such a glorious journey. So I think even in everyday life, I feel like so many times people think because you're spiritual, you're going up into the Himalayas and, you're wearing diapers and praying all day or something, but that's not necessarily true. You can be this spiritual being right in the middle of the chaos and craziness of everyday existence. And you were talking earlier about being on social media and all of that. And I totally agree with you because when I go on social media, my intention always is this the most beautiful representation of love that I can give today? And still be real. You know what I mean? Like really be me and also not share, like I don't really believe in sharing dirty laundry on social media because I feel like it's not benefiting anyone. Like I don't share things that I don't think benefit. It certainly wouldn't benefit me. So I only share that what I think would actually, it makes someone's life better. And that's the way I meet everyone, as a teacher, as a friend, um, how even, as again, people in service. I'm always so honored to be in the space of someone, picking up my garbage. I'm like, can I give you a glass of water? What can I do for you? And they're always so appreciative as well. I remember I was talking to one girl just yesterday in teacher training, and she said, I work behind the counter. And she said, literally, of a coffee place. And she said, literally, 1 in 1,000 would ask me how I am. Because I always go in and I'm like, hi, how are you? And they always ask you your name. And I'm like, well, my name is Chrystal. What's your name? How are you? Thank you for your service. Thanks for working on a holiday, whatever, you know? And those are the things that I think matter in life. So to really be spiritual or to have a spiritual life is just to be a kind and loving soul to everyone, even to the people flipping you off on the highway. You never know what's going on. I believe it's a magnetic thing. Like there's probably something in me that's going on. So I always think, what am I doing that's doing that? That's drawing that towards me. So I always take responsibility. And one of the things that really set me free in my life is taking total responsibility for my life, not blaming my parents, not blaming my circumstances, not blaming my former friends, lovers, anything, and just saying, my life is my choice. And I was shown that in this near death experience, but I've also experienced that in my life. There was a moment when I decided I would be self reliant and take full responsibility. And it was so empowering because then nobody had the reins of my life. No one had the reins. I was able to choose to be free, a free person, free to love and free to hate, free to do everything. No one had the reins to direct me, to make me a person who I didn't want to be or who I wanted to be even. It was my choice. And I think that's the great thing about being human. Hey, do you want to come down and have free will and choice and get to choose between all these opposites and then find your way back to the light no matter what, and then make the light brighter because of your experience, even if that experience is the backdrop of darkness, making everything lighter. I'm like, yeah, sign me up. That's why I said, I've heard a lot of near death experience people saying, they don't want to come back and they're sad to be here and they miss their friends on the other side. Well, my experience is completely opposite. I'm so grateful to be back and to have the vitality to share this message of love and to be this ambassador of light. And yeah, I mean, one day I'll be happy to go back to the other side, but I'm not in a big hurry. I mean, there's so much love right here. I don't need to go outside that. I get to have it here. Like there's so much love here. I love my spiritual family. And by the way, your spiritual family, they've known you for eons. So imagine your husband, like maybe you've known him 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, how much you love him, or your children, you know them 20, 30 years, you love them. Imagine knowing someone for 500 years, 5,000 years, 500,000 years. How about all of time and space? Those people, those angels, guides, teachers, soul companions, how much love you have for them. So yes, I understand the draw towards that, like the loneliness to get back to that kind of love. But those people are also here, like disguised as humans. And you look into their soul, you look into their eyes, and you see the light, and you know, it's a beautiful journey. I'm super happy to be here. And is it hard? It is hard. I get it. I mean, life is not easy. It certainly hasn't been easy for me, but it's beautiful.
Well, thank you for sharing your beautiful journey and your light with all of us. It really has been a treat. One more time, just tell us a little bit about your book, because I know a lot of people are going to want to read more after listening to this.
So it is called Love Letters to Your Soul. And it was a book that I was told to write when I was in an out-of-body state by a being of light who gave me the directive to come back and write a book and tell the world that love is all that matters. It was one of my many destinies that was available. And I was told also, I probably should mention this in case someone doesn't get to read the book, to add into the book, which was really kind of interesting, that the future of medicine is sound and light, which is why I lead a sound bath in my studio. But sound and light is the future of medicine. And said, oh, by the way, put that. I just think it's very poignant. There was a couple of things I was told to put in the book that I want to share. One is that each soul is here for the bliss of its own existence. Two, sound and light is the future of medicine. And most importantly and poignantly, the third one is that love is all that matters. If you forget everything about Chrystal Rae, just never forget love is all that matters. Let that be the cornerstone of your existence. And I will feel like perhaps my life has had a little bit of spark out there by sharing that message that was so poignantly given to me. It's such an honor to share this message of unconditional love that is all that matters.
Thank you so much, Chrystal Rae. It really has been a pleasure. I just thank you for being here with all of us today.
I'm so grateful for you too. You're doing such good work. I'm grateful. So glad to meet you again. I want to see more of you, not just on this platform, but I just love your soul.
Same thing. We'll have to stay in touch. So thank you so much.
All right. You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thanks for joining me on Beyond with Heather Tesch. Please add comments and questions you'd like future guests to answer. Also, if you liked what you heard, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. That'll help keep this podcast going. You can also go to Beyond with Heather Tesch to look for more episodes.